Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Easy Does It, a podcast created specifically for the amazing members of the MJ team. Rob and I are back with you again, excited for another great episode. As usual, we'll have some Do's News, and then we'll jump into our topic. But to get us started today, we're going to jump back to our little grab bag of questions.
The bag is back.
The bag is back. All right. Do you want to choose or do you want me to choose?
I'm going to choose, and I want you to do it this time. Dang it. You already know what all these are, don't you?
Yeah.
Have you thought about them all?
Maybe not.
Not that one. No. Oh, wait. Do you have to pick? I'm picking. Daggum it, I'm picking.
Oh, just
Ooh, I
gotta
like
look
that
through
one.
them all, okay?
Ooh, I like that one.
Well, then use that one.
Heck yeah.
Oh,
There you go.
okay.
You got to read it to the group.
Oh, my gosh.
Yes.
Okay. If you could be somebody else in the office for one day, who would it be and why?
Okay.
Okay. So I think if I could be somebody else in the office for one day.
There will be judgment if you choose poorly.
So I think if I'm thinking of someone who I don't have the skills that they do, the talents and the strengths that they do, but I would love to because I would feel really proud of the work I would be able to do, I think it would be Corey.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah. Yeah. Like I'm so far removed I'm so far removed from being able to be like looking at stuff and be like, ooh, that looks cool. Add that, do that, add this music, make it louder, softer, put this here, shoot this way. That is so far out of my wheelhouse. I can't even do that at my own house. Like if we're going to decorate a space, someone is coming in and telling us how to do that.
Yeah.
It's just not one of my talents. So I think it would be really cool to be able to do that. Like to have those skills and be able to just like create a really cool commercial and like then to think that that commercial is going to be seen by so many people. That's really cool to me.
Man, that's a good pick.
Yeah. So I think if I was, and I don't know, if I was choosing someone who would be more like in my wheelhouse, like I could probably do their job if I tried really hard.
Whoever this is, watch out. She's coming for you.
I don't know. I feel like I'm in such a blessed space because I am in a role where I get to use my talents, or at least what I think, or I hope other people recognize as my talents, every day. So I love the seat that I sit in. So I don't know that there would be any, I do kind of like in purchasing, that kind of thing also kind of appeals to me. Where
What about it?
like the looking at the details and the figuring out how to like this part got ordered, then I have to take this step and do that step and take this step, and then at the end of the day we've helped a customer and the technician get what they need to be able to, like, I do like that, the process piece of that really speaks also to I think some of my talents. So I think that would be something that I wouldn't mind seeing, all of those things that go on behind the scenes over there.
I can see you sitting in there, number one, because that team above any other team has the most snacks. Have you seen how often they have snacks in there?
And they have the cool board in there where you can like say who's going to win the basketball tournament and stuff. That was really cool.
They're a creative team. There's a lot of things going on in there. Ruthless Rachel. I've seen her little, every time I walk past their little fish bowl, I always see that. I'm like, I'll say it out loud. Ruthless Rachel.
Yeah. Like I can see myself just like up on that computer screen, like digging into whatever like that is.
Yeah.
I could see that as well. This question does kind of make me think about how I feel like how little we actually know about what everybody does.
Yeah.
You know, like I have this vision in my mind of what Corey does. I have this vision in my mind about what Rachel and her counterparts in purchasing do. But in all actuality, I don't know. So it kind of like, it makes you think how all of these pieces of the puzzle, everybody has their thing that they do and their talents and their strengths, and they bring them all to the table, and then look at what we can do. You know, it's pretty amazing.
It is pretty interesting to think that you work at a company with this many people, and there's only so many departments here. There's only so many departments that allow us to do what we do as quickly as we do for our customers, as well as we do it. And just right around the corner, you have an entire team that does something that if they started telling you what they do, it'd be like complete another language. Same thing for warehouse. My boy Ryan's in the warehouse, Mr. Guy that put him on his back when we were playing basketball. If you listen to that podcast, but I was just in the parking lot with him. I think it was yesterday, and I was like, "How's it going? How's Service Titan? How's the new change?" And he's like, "It's actually great now." And I'm like, "Well, good." I'm like, "You're not dealing with all the craziness that everybody's talking about?" He goes, "No, I'm actually blessed that I spent as much time as I did researching and figuring things out before we switched." And then he's like, he says, "Now it's easy," but he says, "But yeah, the other day, somebody brought to me and said that these and he completely started talking another language, and he's trying to put it in like normal terms." But I was like, I just looked at him and I'm like, "That's great. I have no idea what you just said to me, but it sounds like you got a handle on it." Like, I have no idea. He's tried to explain min-max to me, and I understand min-max, but him explaining, "Oh yeah, so we had to adjust this one for that, and this one's a consumable, this is not, and so this is the reason." And I kind of got it, but I'm like, I really don't. Like, my mind don't work like that.
Yeah, it was also kind of like Charlie Brown's mom.
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm just grateful we have people
Me too.
like them that are able to do that.
Me too.
It's a real blessing. But it is funny. You even think about tribes, everybody has a job. Some people are taking care of the homestead. Some people are cooking. Some people are taking care of the family. Some people are out hunting. Some people are gathering. Everybody's got their role. And so, like, even think about the skill of hunting. It's a true skill that you have to learn. And some people are naturally gifted at it. Some others have to work at it. Others, it just doesn't work for them. And that's what's so cool.
Yep.
We have such a great organization. We're able to do that.
Look at this tribe.
We appreciate y'all.
Yep.
Appreciate y'all.
Okay. Who's your person?
As you were saying that, I really like your choice. I think Corey's a great pick. I think I understand. I think my mind more works that direction, like understanding. I really appreciate art of all kinds. Even just like the videography side, like understanding angles and all the things. Like I appreciate that stuff very much. Even Randall, we and him were talking the other day, and just understanding where his mind comes from. And I could see the excitement in his face when he's talking about his passion, which is cool. He's always a cheerful guy. Both of them are. But I really would love to be Randy for a day. I would freaking love that. He said in here his mind works in like movie clips and quotes and all this stuff. And I just think it would be so much fun to just sit there and just think how he thinks for the day. Or better yet, another person that is similar but is off in their own world, Sam Broadbeck.
Yes.
I would freaking love, number one, smart. Like, both of them are smart as a whip. They are both amazing in their own department.
Yeah.
They both know their job. They know about plumbing and HVAC. But both of them just have their own way, and it's amazing. I would just love to know what thoughts go through Sam's brain all day. Doggone it.
Doggone.
You can't. That's not a bad. You're not shooting a bad stick. Mr. Count Chocula. He's the Count, right? But both of them are great. But I feel like life is richer with those two around, and I would just love to be one of those guys for a day. That'd be cool. Yeah. I don't think I would get any work done. I think I would just walk around the office just being one of the two of them. That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's what makes it complex to work here is also what makes it great.
Yeah.
We anytime you bring this many people together, there's different viewpoints, different personalities, different all the things. But it also too is what makes it. I've never met anyone like Randy. Never met anyone like Sam. I I just having people that you meet and you see these, they just bring a different energy to life. And so I think it's really cool that we have all that here.
Yeah. One person I really like, those two are amazing. One person that I think would be up there in the top 3 would probably be Adrian. And I say that, and I've told her this before, probably absolutely one of the most positive people I know. Always, her mind's always working all the time. She's always thinking. She'll hear an idea or she'll hear a problem come up, and she's like, "Have you considered this, or have you thought about that?" Or something goes down and it's not favorable. Something happens, and then she's like, "Yeah, but it's going to be okay. We're going to figure it out." I'm like, "Dadgummit, I appreciate that so much." So it's nice having her right next door.
It is nice. I also too want to be able to wear her shoes.
What? So you can have an extra 6 inches on you, or what?
Yes.
What are we talking about?
Yeah,
That's
envious.
a talent. She's strolling around. I usually have to tell her to be quiet. She comes down the hall, always knows she's coming. I say shh as she's coming by, and she gives me the look and keeps on walking as she's laughing.
Yeah, I know. I'm envious of her shoe wear.
I can't do that. Can't do it.
Hers and Shallon's.
All right, so we have the Dues News today. We're gonna hear some words. What do you got for us?
So, all of you, by this point, by the time you hear this, will certainly have received your newsletter for the month of April. And if you took some time to read Jonathan's article here in the front, that's what we're going to use today for some Dues News. So, Jim Rohn, of course, you guys have heard us talk about Jim Rohn on here quite a few times, but that's where this comes from. And so we thought we would pull a little bit from this for our Dues News this week. So it says, and I'll start kind of in the middle. We all have reversals in those moments when things seem to fall apart. Challenging circumstances aren't reserved just for the poor, the uneducated, or the destitute. The rich and the poor have marital problems. The rich and the poor have setbacks. In the final analysis, it isn't what happens that determines the quality of our lives. It's what we choose to do when we set the sail and then discover, after all our efforts, that the wind has changed directions. When the winds change, we need to change. We need to get on our feet and reset the sail in the manner that steers us toward the destination of our own choosing. Boom.
That's some good jazz. That's some really good jazz.
Yeah. I can't remember the exact, I was trying to come up with this quote before we started today, but I've read, I think this is a Jim Rohn quote, but where he says that the stuff or the circumstances, what happens to everybody, all of those things, the circumstances and the what, it happens to everybody. It's what we choose to do when those circumstances present themselves. And so, and we've talked about in here setting your sail and making sure that you're going in the direction that you're going. But I think so much of this comes back to the choice, the choice of what to do when things do get difficult or when things do change. Not just saying, oh, I'm never going to get over this, or this is never going to happen for me, but making a different choice, because the same exact thing has happened to someone else and they've made the choice to overcome. They've made the choice to do something different. It can be done. It's just choosing to do it.
Yeah. I latched onto the part with the choice as well, because I think, you going back to internal versus external locus of control, you can say that I have no control over what's happening. And within reason, there are a lot of things that you don't have control over. But one thing we can always be sure of is that the winds are going to change. Things aren't going to always be great. You can look at our business. Sometimes the business is going very well, and then other times it's just like medium or moderate. Mm-hmm. I know we've had hard years. We've come off some medium, okay times. And even like right now, today's beautiful. Last night was amazing outside. I feel like we're the only business out there that it's like when it's 70 degrees outside, you might be a little upset because it's like, come on, I want it to be hot or really cold. But when you can count on the fact that the winds are going to change and they're going to shift and move, figuratively speaking, in our lives, that's one thing you can always rely on and know, okay, I need to be vigilant. I need to be on my toes. When things are going really well, truly enjoy it. Mm-hmm. Truly enjoy it, because you can always know that it's going to get a lot worse. It's going to get worse, and then it's going to come back up to those high times. So I know we're talking talking about a good subject today, but we have to understand when things are going really well, I need to really lean into it, enjoy it, and cherish it. When things are just going medium, that's okay too. And when things aren't so great, that's okay. But we need to know that it's going to get better later. But we need to do everything in our control to adjust. We all deal with things. So I really like this one. This was a good one.
Yeah, I think maybe Jonathan chose this because of our transition to Service Titan.
Yeah.
You know, that this is a change. It's something that we all have had to navigate. And I think we might have talked about this a little bit in another podcast, is just understanding that it won't feel like this forever. You know, when we are kind of in those dips or in those setbacks, it's not gonna last forever. So don't let that get us into a negative place. Don't let us get it, into a place where we don't have the right mindset. We're not looking at things the right way. If we can just, I know we joke all the time, but like, if I can just make it through this week.
I'm going to get that tattooed on my arm.
If I can just make it through this week or this month or this quarter or this year or whatever it is. But I do think that is, to some extent, it's like, it's hard right now. You know, it's a busy time for me, or whatever it is happening in your life. It's hard. It's okay to acknowledge that it's hard.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's not going to feel like this forever. I'm not going to let it feel like this forever.
No.
Because it's not good for me in so many ways.
I mean, we're already, what, four weeks?
Yeah, we're recording on the 12th, and we March 6th, 7th?
Yeah, something like that. So, I mean, we're a month past our launch day for Service Titan, and it's really, there's been some setbacks, some challenges, but we've continued to push forward. I know some departments are probably feeling it more than others, and that's challenging. But I think when we go back to looking at what challenge is, it makes us better. It makes us stronger. There's some processes that are very manual right now, and that's okay. Like, we're going to figure out a process or a workaround or an automation to fix all that. But if you look at it like it's a problem, or you look at it like it's character building, or it's going to make me better, that's a completely different, a different outcome, a different growth moment for us. Jack was playing baseball last night, his rec game, and Meredith, we got crushed 10-0. Crushed. And truth be told, we haven't won a single game this whole season. We've tied one, and it's been really tough to watch that. But I was telling the kids last night when we got done, I'm like, guys, if you're not showing up for your team, if you're not showing up to say, hey, I've got your back, I'm going to cover you, I'm going to encourage you. If we miss something, it's not a big deal. Like, if you're there for your team, all this stuff just goes away, and now you're having fun supporting your people. It's not about you. It's about your teammates. So I think when we really lift others up and can help people guide people in their journey, they're going to help us too.
Yeah.
So that teamwork's really, really important. So I know those challenges are going to come up. Lean into your teammates.
Yeah.
They'll always help you through that.
Yeah. And think of the resilience, like even with the example with Jack, like think of the resilience that starts to build in people, you know? I mean, we'll probably talk a little bit about resilience today, but when you go through these hard times and you make it through to the other side, that's resilience building. And so if we never had anything to set us back or that was difficult, then we would never have opportunities to build our capacity for resilience. Yeah. And that's such a critical part of life, because we all know we are going to get set back at some point. We're going to get knocked down. Yeah. So how do you get back up? What are the skills I need to be able to get back up? Yeah. Yeah.
And what's not optional? Vulnerability. We're going to get caught out there in the land of the unknown, and it's going to make us feel vulnerable. We're going to talk about vulnerability today.
Yes, we are.
That's our subject of the day. And so just going down that path, vulnerability is one of those things. It's hard to talk about. What does old Brene say? Vulnerability doesn't like to be.
Oh, shame doesn't. Yeah.
Shame doesn't like to be talked about.
Doesn't like to be spoken. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so when we look at vulnerability, it's one of those things that most people don't want to lean into. They don't want to expose themselves to. They don't want to allow themselves to feel vulnerable, which, I mean, it makes sense. You think about us as humans, you don't want to be seen as weak. You don't want to find yourself in one of those challenging positions that makes you feel less than. Mm-hmm. And so even in those moments, that show up for us that make us vulnerable, if we don't have the tools or the skills to navigate that, it can be one of those really funky zones that we just completely avoid. And so vulnerability is one of those interesting topics. And so we want to bring that to you guys today and chat a little bit about it. So
yeah, this is, of course, total fangirling over Brene Brown. I was listening to, she was on an Oprah podcast.
You didn't listen to her podcast, did you?
I've listened to all of them.
No, you have.
All of them, like more than once. And you know, Oprah introduces her, and it's like the crowd is like screaming for Brene, and I'm like,
you were screaming in your car, weren't you?
Me. It is 100% me. And I think it's so interesting. I had never, until I got here, and we really started, you know, who introduced me to Brene was Adrienne.
Really?
She sent something maybe to me and Shallon. This was a couple years ago, when she's like, I've just seen a few things from this author, like wanted to pass it along to you guys. And boy, wow. What a new world was. I don't even think I ever thought about the word vulnerability, really. And like what role it plays in our lives, and the things that I was doing to protect myself from vulnerability. I don't know that I have used the word vulnerability in all my previous years of life as many times as I have in the past 2 or 3 years. Which goes to exactly what you're saying. Is it something that we don't like to talk about, we don't like to think about, and all of that is purposeful. It's like self-protection, self-preservation. And but since reading Brene's work and listening to her podcast, I have learned so much about myself, and about just connecting with other people. And so I think we have, to no one's surprise, a lot of her books in the library, because I'm secretly trying to make all of you read the books that I've read.
All of the books are going to be Brene Brown's books, multiple copies, and we'll have to put all the other ones in storage. Yeah.
So we have a lot of her books down there, but I hope that once people listen to the podcast, that they recognize that it's something that we need to know more about. It's something we need to recognize as a part of all of us, regardless of whether we want to do vulnerability, in quotes, regardless of whether we want to do vulnerability or not. If you don't do vulnerability is doing you. So it's knowing about it at least helps you understand the role that it can play in your life and in your connection with other people.
I don't think I realized how much vulnerability is showing up in our day-to-day until I was reading about Brene's like definition of it. And she was just saying it's essentially uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. And so how often does that happen to us every single day? Our new technicians that are going out into the field that just graduated are Builda plumbers. Shout out, you guys. Johnny, you know who you are. What? Mr. What? So they're about to hit the field here in just maybe a couple weeks. They got their ride week, and then they're live, which is exciting. But you're going to roll into some uncertainty immediately. Your very first call. My very first call, I forgot. I was standing at the front door. I knock on the door. The dude answers. I'm like, hey. And he's like, hey. And I just like stood there, and I'm like, can I come in? Like, it was the most awkward. And it was a heat maintenance, which should have taken me about an hour and some change a little bit. I was up there for about 3. You know, it's like there's the uncertainty. You don't know. Emotional exposure. Yeah. That's going to happen on calls. I mean, I think we typically think about it in our personal life, and that happens. You know, if you have a chaotic life or you have a challenging circumstance, emotional exposure is going to happen. So I don't think I realized how often vulnerability was showing up until I read that definition, because the Webster's definition just says it's being exposed to the possibility of being attacked or harmed either physically or emotionally. And I think that's usually what I was thinking about. I'm like, how often is that really happening? But just recognizing uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure, that stuff happens all the time.
Yep. Yeah, she talks about if you love someone, then you are being vulnerable every single day. Yeah. If you love anyone, then there is uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure there. Because number one, you can't control whether that person loves you back. You can't control that person is safe every day. That's uncertainty, it's risk, and it's like I think about my children, and I think, of course, about Michael. It's like when you have a child and you love them more than anything on this earth, that is uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. Every day when you're sending them out into the world, and they could get made fun of, or what if they're not safe at school, or the list goes on, right? So that in of itself, every single day, whether we recognize it or not, there is some level of that uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. And I think typically what happens is we don't want to acknowledge it, right? That's where the vulnerability piece comes in. We don't want to acknowledge it. We don't want to be perceived as weak. We don't want to be perceived as less than perfect. And so we keep those thoughts of uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure inside. And what that does is it keeps us from truly connecting with other people. And she says all the time, we are hardwired, and we've talked about this a little bit on here too. We are hardwired for connection with other people. Does not matter if you are the most introverted introvert that's ever lived, right? We are hardwired for connection. And when we can't be vulnerable with other people, we cannot be truly connected. And when we're not connected, there will always be there will always feel like there's a missing piece when we are not truly connected with other people, because we're not fulfilling that human need that we all have.
Yeah, with it being hardwired, she was saying that vulnerability is required, essential for deep relationships, and then even good leadership. If you're going to have really deep, meaningful relationships, you're going to have to be vulnerable at some point, even to a small degree. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about this later, but some people too vulnerable. Sometimes they tell you a little bit too much. Mm-hmm. But we want to have deep relationships with people, even if you are the most introverted of introverted. You want somebody to just get you and understand you and appreciate you just for who you are. And then when we look at leadership, you are going to be vulnerable at some point. There's going to be a lot of uncertainty. I was just talking to Sam in the contact center the other day, and it's like she just started not long ago. She's loving it. She's doing a killer job over there. But the amount of days she's just like, she'll pop in or we'll talk, she'll text me what's going on that she's dealing with. And it's just the amount of times that she's like, well, never dealt with that before, or never thought about that. And I'm like, welcome to leadership. Mm-hmm. Welcome to management. It's going to happen. And so in order to be a good manager, you have to be willing to lean into uncertainty. In order to be a good manager, you're going to have to listen to people's complaints or their ideas, or sometimes you're going to have to give the reins up to other people in order to help grow them. And that's uncertain, right? Mm-hmm. Emotional risk is definitely going to happen. So whether we recognize it or not, you were just talking about the kids. I know one of yours just took a long trip. That's a lot of uncertainty. That's a lot of emotional exposure. It's like, this is something that's new. Yeah. And so I can only imagine the amount of thoughts and feelings that were going through your mind when that happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think, when the problem comes is when we cannot show up as our true selves, and just say, like, I'm having a really hard time with Mila going to Washington, D.C. She went with her eighth grade class. They had a fantastic time, but she was in Washington, D.C. for 3 nights, and I was here. And so
this was the first long trip, right?
Yeah,
away
like
from
that,
home.
for sure. Yeah. She went to camp before, but it was like my parents were like 45 minutes away from her. Yeah. So I think it was, the issue comes in with then me not being able to say, I'm feeling really emotional about this separation from her. Yeah. Because, I don't know. And this kind of goes back to, we'll talk about some of the myths, and this is, Brene talks about this as well. Most of us are not brought up to be vulnerable. We don't have models of that in our lives. So, my parents, they're fantastic. I've talked about them on here before, and I think all of us as parents, we do the best we do the best we can with what we have. But in my family, it was, we didn't talk about a lot of feelings. It was just like, dust yourself off, and there is some room for dust yourself off. Hear me clearly say that. Slap a Band-Aid on it and let's move on. But even more importantly than that, it's like, if something happened at school or whatever, being able to come home and say, this really hurt me, or I'm frustrated, I'm sad, I'm angry, and being able to talk about those things, it's just not what we did.
Yeah.
Right. And if you think about it, even more so for my parent, if I think about their upbringing, it was even less talked about. For my parents, when they were growing up, there was no time, room, or allowance for that kind of conversation. And so I think we all kind of just grow up thinking that the way that it was modeled in front of me is the way that it's supposed to be.
What did you do growing up when you felt upset, sad, angry, whatever? Did you talk to Becca? Did you talk to your friends? Or did you just keep it to yourself?
Suck it up, Buttercup.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I mean, like, kind of maybe like cry in your room sort of situation, cry in the shower if you need to, and then, just kind of, I don't think my parents ever said that, like, suck it up, Buttercup. But I think when you don't see other people, particularly the adults in your life, modeling that type of behavior, then implicitly you're learning, nobody's explicitly telling you to keep your feelings inside, but that's what you're seeing. So that's what you think is real. That's what you think you're supposed to do. And so I think I think we just we figure out other ways to handle that. For me, it's perfection. That's the way that I deal with that. If I do everything perfectly, then I can't ever feel I can't feel that way. If my grades are good and I'm following the rules and I'm doing well in sports and I'm doing all of these things this way, if I'm perfect, then my parents will be proud of me. I won't disappoint anyone. I won't feel bad. We'll just all carry on, sunshine and rainbows all the time. And I used to think that part of me was a good thing. And I do think it is important to hold yourself to a high standard. I do hold myself to a very high standard, but that did not allow me, it did not allow me to give myself any grace. And that's not okay either. It's not okay to go through your life thinking that you can never make a mistake. That ain't healthy. So I think until I started reading and really kind of getting into this vulnerability piece, what I then recognized is that my perfection is my armor. My perfection is the armor that I put on and I carry so that I can't get hurt, so that I can't, have to feel things that I don't want to feel. And so I think that's part of this process, is really figuring out when you feel vulnerable, not even when you feel vulnerable, what are you doing to keep yourself from feeling vulnerable?
Yeah. I'm glad you said the armor. I have a Brené Brown book right here, and it's called Dare to Lead. It's an amazing book, and probably my favorite chapter is what she called the armory. Mm-hmm. And there's 16 different bits of armor that we wear, and the one that you're talking about is so if you haven't read the book yet, it's really good. She has this chapter to where she has the left-hand side, which is armored leadership. The book is mostly about leadership, but there's a lot of really good things that are in there. But the armored leadership side is what we tend to do to try to avoid confronting vulnerability and whatever else. And then the other side of the book talks about daring leadership, basically the solution, what you're supposed to do for it. And the very first one, number one, driving perfectionism and fostering fear of failure, which is, I feel like it's pretty common. We talk about perfectionism, and, even sometimes you look at perfectionism, it's like, hey, what's wrong with that? Like, try to make things as good as you can, make them as close to perfect as you can. But it also, the second part is fostering fear of failure, which is the caveat to that, which is like, I can't fail. Well, failure's okay. If you fail, it's not the end of the world. You're a lot of times going to get another chance. I was just talking to somebody yesterday. It was actually two people. And we were talking about the first time I applied for supervisor here. I was ready. I thought I was ready for it. I was so ready, Meredith. And me and Brett Sumter applied, and Brett ended up getting the job, and I did not. So he gave me a little jingle the day that he got the offer, and he's like, "Hey, man, I just want to let you know, I know we both applied for the position, and they just offered it to me, and I'm going to accept it. No hard feelings, because I'm better than you." I'm just kidding. He didn't say that. He said no. That's what it sounded like in my head. He just said no hard feelings. I just want to make sure we're cool. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. Like, totally get it. Better man won. It's all good. I got off the phone. And I was so mad. I was like, dang it. Like, I was so upset about it. But I mean, Brett's amazing. I was not ready for that. And even I promised myself, I said, the next time I'm going to be ready for it. And, it came back around. Felt like it took forever for the next position to open, but I wanted to be so perfect and make it right and like really drive and get after it. But you're never going to be completely ready for that stuff. That failure in that moment made me a better supervisor than I would have been if I would have got it originally. Because even when I got it on the next round, I still wasn't ready. Yeah. Like I was like, if I would have got this a year ago or whatever time period it was, I would have not have been close to being ready. So the daring leadership version of driving perfectionism is modeling and encouraging healthy striving, empathy, and self-compassion, which is absolutely important when it comes to having grace for ourselves, having empathy for ourselves, self-compassion. I mean, and even the modeling and encouraging piece is great when you think about it. In your case, Meredith, it's like this was the armor that I carried around as a young lady and all the way up until, now it's like one of those things where it's a part of you. So it's like, I need to take this armor off. Mm-hmm. I mean, the Bible talks about, carry your cross daily, take up your cross and carry it. It's like, in this case, we got to take the armor off and model these things for ourselves, but also our kids. So when our kids can see that, hey, I've made adjustments, this is what I struggled with, this is what adjustments I'm making, they learn from us. They're always learning, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is like that failure. Obviously, I have tried really hard my whole life to avoid failure at all costs. But what I recognize now is that and Renee talks about this a lot, without failure, there's no innovation, there's no creativity, there's no, if we say, or if Shallon says, one of the things I want you to do is I want you to try new things. I want you to come up with new ideas and let's get information out to people a little bit differently. And I can't fail at that, then I also lose my creativity to be able to do that. And I think we've talked about this on here before as well. And this to me has really spoke to me as I have tried to get over this hump of fearing failure, is that when you're not afraid to be vulnerable and to show up as your true self, and you have people love you as your true self, then you can do things that require uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure, because no matter what happens, those people are going to love, they're going to love you no matter what. Like this, and I've said this before on here, this podcast for me is outside of my comfort zone because I cannot control what happens. There's a great risk of uncertainty, right? We come in here. I can't plan how this is going to go, as much as I might try. I can't plan how it's going to go. I can't plan how it's going to be received. And obviously people don't typically come up to us and say like, that last episode really sucked. Like most people don't say those types of things. They say we really enjoy it, whatever, about the podcast. But of course, the story I'm telling myself in my head is that someone is still out there saying like, her voice is annoying, right? Or when she laughs, like, what's his name? the cartoon character.
Oh,
Muttley.
Muttley.
When she laughs, like,
I can't do it.
yeah, she talks too slow. I've made up every story. I've made up every story in my head in the book. I don't like her voice. She talks too slow. Why does she laugh so much? I've even told you and Corey, I'm cutting the laughter out.
You absolutely
Which
have.
I literally can't do. You know, but there's just like, or people are just going to say like, this podcast is stupid. Like people are not going to, that to me is uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure.
Yeah. But here you are bringing this daggum bag on here trying to ask random questions.
I know. See, that's me leaning in.
You are leaning in.
I'm leaning in.
I like this.
Yeah. So I think it's, but that's the thing is like, I felt really strongly about doing this, pushing myself outside my comfort zone, giving our people something that they can listen to, because we have so many people who spend so much time in their vehicles, and it's worth it. It's worth it to have the uncertainty, the risk, and the emotional exposure. And if the podcast fails, then what I know is that I have people in my personal life and people here who are going to love me regardless. They are not going to look at me and see a failure. I think that is helpful when you are trying to put yourself out there, is recognizing that I am not defined by this one piece of work, or all my pieces of work, you know, so, but I think you have to get to a point where you actually believe that. I knew that. I knew I had people who loved me, regardless of what happened, but I don't know that I believed that, like truly believed, that I was worth more or am more than a collection of my work.
Do you think, going back to the perfectionism piece, because I'm thinking in my mind, there's a difference between my work or a thing I did failed and I'm a failure. Mm-hmm. Is that somehow correlated to the perfectionism piece? Was things need to be perfect, and if they're not perfect, then it's a reflection of who I am versus something. Is that correlated together for you?
For sure. And that's the difference between shame and guilt, right? So shame is, I am a failure. Guilt is, oh man, that didn't work out. This thing that I tried failed. That's the difference between shame and guilt. And so shame, of course, is, she calls them shame gremlins. Those creepy things. Did you ever watch that movie?
This is a great movie.
What?
Are you kidding me?
Oh,
the second one
God.
was the best one. I enjoyed that one when they like turned into different kinds of animals and they broke into that lab.
One.
It's not even scary. I know you don't like scary movies, but it was good. Did you think it was scary?
Yes.
They're just little. They're like little gnomes running around with long ears. Gizmo was cute.
He's so cute.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I will attach a picture of a gremlin for you youngsters out there who don't know what the gremlins is. I will attach a picture in the show notes, and you can let us know whether you think that those things are scary or not, because they're
not. Okay, they're like little monsters. I get it.
They are.
I get
and
it.
They're like,
what was that? The heck was that?
They have giant ears and sharp teeth. Anyway, so she calls them, that's what she calls them, shame gremlins. And the shame gremlins are the thoughts in your head that are like, you know, you failed. You're not, you know, I'm not enough. You're a failure. That was weak. You know, those are the shame gremlins in your head. So you have to really, instead of putting your armor on and saying, okay, I'm gonna please, I'm gonna perfect, I'm gonna numb, I'm gonna do whatever my armor is, you got to step back and say, like, no, creepy shame gremlins, that's not true. It's not true that I'm a failure. I tried something new, I learned something from it. I'll either try again or I'll go in a different direction. But I think you have to recognize when you're starting to take on those shame gremlins.
I do recognize the internal dialogue, the importance of catching your internal dialogue before it becomes external. Mm-hmm. The internal dialogue, the story we tell ourselves consistently, until you name it, that I am telling myself this story and recognize it, going back to awareness, it just is that monologue playing in your mind and you believe it. Mm-hmm. So we talked last time about psychocybernetics and, you know, essentially the path that you're on, that you get set out on when you're a kid, You just kind of feel like these are the bounds that I need to stay in, and you don't recognize there's a left and right that you can turn and go down. I always have that image of a boat taking off in a bay, and you got the posts that guide you out into the deeper water. But if you recognize, like, I can actually go right and left, and there's other people over there doing their own path out into the wide ocean or whatever. Like, when you recognize that you can challenge those literal limits, then that's when your life starts getting really interesting. Otherwise, we have our own internal dialogue that's constantly running. I'm not good enough. I can't do it. You're never going to make it. I'm always going to be broke. This is just my life.
Yeah.
I never get it right. All those little stories sometimes don't even sound like words in your mind. It's just a belief system that you have. And until you can name it and challenge it, it stays there. And the sad part is, the scary part is, it's always there with us. It's the dialogue. It's the person that we talk to the most is ourselves.
Yeah.
So if we can find that language and say, okay, I need to make an adjustment here, and just challenging yourself of like, no, that's not true. That's not who I am. Perfectionism, I don't need to get it perfect. I just need to get it right. Like, what can I do to push this forward? You fail, that's okay. You're not a failure. And you have to separate, that's separating your work from your being. And recognizing just because a thing that I did fail doesn't mean that I'm a failure. In fact, some of the most successful people in the world, they aren't always the rich people, but even if you look at people that have started a business, they probably failed a bunch before they got there. But you don't see that. You just see whatever that final product is. It's a company that's uber successful, but in realization, they have failed over and over. And the best part is, a lot of times you have the time to make it right. So I think that's what we really need to lean into. So that armor that we carry around, whether it be perfectionism, she talks about hustling for our worth, which is a whole other one, which is, I mean, there's 16 of them, y'all. Like, there's a lot. But hustling for your worth, I got to hustles to show how good I am. That's one.
Yeah. What's the one about being right?
Being a knower and being right. I starred that one. Versus being a learner and getting it right. That's another one. That's one I struggle with. One thing I love that Brene said, and I know you know this by heart, it's tattooed on your arm. The armor that we carry around is really heavy. And we may not recognize how heavy it is until that armor is, like, you're able to set it down. I was with Andrew Stevens yesterday at the gym, and we were doing back extensions for the first time. It's this weird, like, have you seen those before? Like the machine for that?
Where you do you go,
you like lift
down and up?
Yep.
Yeah.
So you lay down kind of on your stomach, you're at a 45-degree angle, and you like bend at the hips, the pads are right there, and then you just raise yourself back up. But you can grab weights. And I'm like, have you done this before? He's like, no. And I'm like, so you just grab a weight, you just basically, you bend over, and then you just put your body straight and bend over. So I'm like, we're going to do 3 sets of 15. He's like, cool. Yo, when we got done with that, my lower back was tight. It was tight. But it was funny because as soon as you drop the weight, you stand up, and he's like, I can feel like my posture is better now because of that. He's like, I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, I feel lighter because I was able to, one, put the weight down, but I'm like using that musculature and I'm strengthening it. And when we're able to put that armor down, you're surprised at how much more weightless you are and what you can actually accomplish because you're not carrying around 50 pounds of armor.
Yeah.
So one thing for all of us to recognize is when you're carrying around that armor, the things that we feel like are protecting us, you can say they're protecting us, but really they're slowing you down of what you're actually capable of. So you need to recognize what it is. We'll put a graphic in here for you guys so you can see the different types of armor out there. This was eye-opening. Was this as eye-opening from you as it was for me? This is insane.
The section in there, when I read the section in there about perfectionism, literally she wrote that section about me.
Yeah.
Everything in there describes me to a T.
Yeah.
And like I said, I always thought that was a good part. That was a positive quality that I had about myself, that I always expected myself not to fail. That is just not, I mean, even hearing myself say it now, it's just not even realistic.
Yeah. Did you know that before you read all this stuff?
I think that I knew I was a perfectionist. I remember clearly in college, I would be like, I have to study, I have my biology final. I have to study more. I have to make an A, and Michael's like, why are you putting so much pressure on yourself about this? Like, just, you've studied incessantly, like, what is this? And I now know
I have to win.
Right.
I have to be the best.
I now know that that's what that is, the way that I was proving my worth to everyone was by being the best student. I was the best student. I was a good athlete. I was, and so all I did, which we've talked about my struggles with this in parenting, all I did was just carry that over into the other roles of my life. That's why I struggled when I was an assistant principal, is I couldn't be a perfect assistant principal because I wasn't really great at all the things an assistant principal has to do. They're not my talents. Going back to something else that I've learned since I've been here, I was trying to work on my weaknesses every day in that role, and that wasn't working for me. So I couldn't be a perfect assistant principal. I sure as heck wasn't being a perfect wife and mom, because I was spending so much time trying to perfect being an assistant principal. And so at that juncture, everyone is losing. I'm losing. My kids are losing. Michael's losing. Even the people that I'm trying to be so perfect for at work are losing. And so it's like I just kept carrying that over to every role in my life. Same thing about being a perfect mom. It's like if my kids show up without, I don't know, if they show up to the party and we forgot to get a gift, that's a reflection on me. If my child's the only one sitting in the classroom and they don't have a yearbook, that's a reflection on me. If they show up late to softball practice, then that's a reflection on me. Got to be on time, got to be perfect, got to have what you need, that'll run anybody ragged.
Yeah.
And so what I was doing is I was just taking that armor and I was applying it to every position in my life. And so now it's so freeing, because now I recognize, like the other day, Milo was late for volleyball practice. Oh, okay. So what? It's like, we forgot to do this for Girl Scouts. Okay. Before I would have raked myself over the coals for that. And I just have had to let go of those types of things. And I do think it frees you up to think about doing things that are outside of your comfort zone. I would have never considered doing this podcast, just even 5 years ago. I just wouldn't have even thought that it's something. Even when we started kind of talking about it at the beginning, I had already told myself I was not the right person for this. Mm-hmm. But that's where you have to just say, nope, I'm worth more, right? Podcast, no podcast, show up late to practice, don't show up late to practice. It doesn't change the fact that I am still worth more than that. So it's, I think going back to how we talk to ourselves, that's one thing I've really had to work on in all of this. And we talked about this in the mindset class that we just did recently, is we would never talk to other people the way that we talk to ourselves. And it's just so funny that we think it's okay to talk to ourselves that way, although we would not talk to other people that way. And Brene even says one thing you can ask yourself is, like, if you had a friend who was going through this right now, what would you say to her or him? Because it's different than what you would say to yourself. For sure.
I think that we have the best intentions for the people that are important to us, but that's the interesting part, is I wouldn't say that to the person that is not me, that I do care about, but I would say terrible things to myself. Mm-hmm. I think we've all had those conversations with ourselves, and you just, like you said, rake yourself across the coals. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times it's just completely like asinine. It's like, why would I even say that? Yep. That's not even practical, but we still say it to ourselves. Mm-hmm. I thought what was interesting in this book, there's a scene, of course, I'm a Star Wars fan. I have a TIE fighter on my desk way up there, if you didn't see it before. But Brene actually brings a story into this. And it says Yoda is trying to teach Luke how to use the Force and how the dark side of the Force, anger, fear, and aggression is holding him back. Luke and Yoda are in the swamp where they have been training when Luke points out a dark cave at the base of a giant tree. And looking at Yoda says, "There's something not right here. I feel cold. Death." Yoda explains to Luke that the cave is dangerous and strong with the dark side of the Force. Luke looks confused and afraid, but Yoda's response is simply, "And you must go." There we go. When Luke asks what's in the cave, Yoda explains only what you take with you. And I think about us walking into challenging circumstances, uncertainty, risk, just getting up and putting on your shoes and, like our boy Edward said last time, tying them in a different way, just so you can be aware and recognize where you're at. But what you take into life with you forward, it's only what you decide to take with you.
Yep.
That's really all it is. But again, going back to the unfortunate part is sometimes we don't even realize the crap that we're taking with us we don't even need. Mm-hmm. I've been camping. I've done all kinds of stuff in my life in the military. And one thing that always stood out to me when I was in the military was ounces equal pounds, pounds equal pain. So when we would go out on really long rucks, which is basically, they called them humps. I don't know why they called it that, but we'd go out on long humps and you would go 20 kilometers, 20 clicks as they would call it. And you're like, take what you need. And you're like, cool. But if you forgot something that you really needed, like you suffered. Mm-hmm. I remember one time I forgot to bring like some warming layers and it was out in a cold area. I've got everything else, but I forgot some things to keep me warm. And when we stopped Meredith, I started going through my pack that was well packed. You could say it was perfect. It was well packed. I had everything in its own little area, but I forgot that. And I suffered for that. Mm-hmm. And it taught me from that moment forward, I need to pack this. But I think when we look at it, it's like, I need to take all these things with me. I need to protect myself. I need to do this, this, and this. And you get there and it's like, I didn't need half this crap. Mm-hmm. And you realize like, I suffered for that. And so that armor that we carry around with us, it's not necessary.
Yep.
Now, I think there's caveats to everything. Like, we talk about we need to be open with the people we care about. It's okay to share how you feel about things. But there are like the other extremes of that, which she talks about in her book is vulnerability means you need to fully disclose everything with everybody. And she's like that. Like, you can disclose some things. You ain't got to tell everybody everything. That's completely on the opposite end of that. And I think we've all had somebody in our life that's done that. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is happening right now. And then you're like, I'm never talking to this person again. But, trust is one of those things that's built over time. Yep. You can share a little bit with somebody and, sometimes they share stuff back with you. But that trust, which is being able to anticipate somebody's behavior, you're giving your, that sense, you're turning, what does she say? Strong back, soft front is what she says, I think. But you're saying, hey, I'm willing to be open with you and show you a little bit of my soft side and, acknowledging that's an honor for somebody to do that. Mm-hmm. But we need to do that responsibly on both sides. I need to be responsible with the soft side they decided to show me, keep that to myself. And then the other side is the person that's sharing, we don't need to fully disclose everything. Like you trust a little bit over time. That's truly how that strong, long-lasting trust is built.
Yeah, she talks about the example she gives is a marble jar in the book. And it's funny because I used a marble jar when I had a classroom. And basically the whole premise of it is that every time the class does something well, or you catch somebody doing something that's like being a good friend or being a good listener or whatever, you put a marble in the jar. And when the marble jar is full, the class gets to do something fun. And so she relates trust to the marble jar. And that's what happens is every time we have an interaction with someone and we feel this sense of like, I've shared a little bit, you've shared a little bit, or we were able to kind of bounce back with one another, and we put a marble in the jar. And so every time we put a marble in the jar, we build these layers of trust and trust and trust and trust. And so we don't share things like big things with people who we haven't already worked through the marble jar with. We have to, over time, we build that trust so that then we can share those things, because we trust that person now. We've filled each other's, how full is your bucket, right? We filled each other's marble jars. And I think one of the things you were saying leads me to think about, she talks about these myths. There's myths around vulnerability. And one of those is vulnerability is full disclosure. It means I lay my heart, my secrets, my everything out on the line for you. That's not, she even says some leaders will ask her, how many times do I need to cry in front of my people before they will know that I'm being vulnerable? And she's like, that you're missing the point.
Yeah.
It's not what this is. And so I think it's important to know what vulnerability is not. And one of the things that vulnerability is not is oversharing. Like you said, we all been in a place where somebody been trying to overshare, and that's not leading us to placing marble jars or marbles in the jar. Another myth that she says is vulnerability is weakness. And we've kind of alluded to that a little bit today already. And she says that actually vulnerability is our greatest measure of courage. And she talks about how she works with the military a lot, and she'll ask them, have you ever entered into a situation where you had to be courageous and there was no uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure? And of course, that's
nope.
No.
Yeah.
The answer to that is no. You've never entered into any time when you've had to be courageous, when you didn't feel that's why you had to be courageous, was because it felt uncertain and there was risk and there was emotional exposure. She talks about how fear is not the absence of courage. Those two, a lot of times we're feeling both of those things at the exact same time.
Right.
So vulnerability is weakness. I think that's probably the biggest one. And likely when you ask people what is vulnerability, they will say weakness. Another one is, I don't do vulnerability, which we've already kind of, talked about. When we're not doing vulnerability, it means we let fear drive our thinking and our behavior, which almost always leads to acting out or shutting down. So,
if somebody literally just says, I don't do that, they're shutting down. They're shutting down.
Right.
I'm avoiding the complete conversation.
Yep.
And it's unfortunate, but again, it's no different than the perfectionism side or thinking, hey, this is weakness. I'm not doing that. I mean, it completely removes you from the ability to truly connect with people. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're holding all of your emotions, all of your feelings, everything that you're feeling on the inside. You're just saying, I'm not going to share that with anybody. I'm going to keep it to myself. Yep. Nobody wants to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah. Not showing up as our true, authentic selves.
Yeah.
The next one is, I can go it alone. And we already talked about that a little bit as well. We're hardwired for connection. In the absence of authentic connection, we will suffer. We will, one way or the other, that suffering will come through. We cannot go this alone, because that's not who we are as people. You can engineer. Ooh, I love this one, because, I like to try and plan everything just right, so nothing goes wrong. You can engineer the uncertainty and discomfort out of vulnerability, which means if I plan everything just right and I do this just right, then I won't have to feel those feelings. And so that's exactly what we try to do. And you can't. Vulnerability is discomfort. And so there's just no way around that one. Trust comes before vulnerability. We talked about that a little bit as well. We need to trust to be vulnerable, and we need to be vulnerable to build trust. They grow together, not separately. It's kind of like a chicken and the egg sort of situation, is they grow with each other. And then we talked about the last one, vulnerability is disclosure. So I think it's important when we're trying to figure out where we are in this vulnerability thing, what exactly is it, what is it, and what it's not. And so I think the myths kind of help us know the difference there.
Yeah. And I think I know that she talks about a little bit about the difference between what men experience in vulnerability and then what women experience. It looks different. And I know the vulnerability is weakness side of that's one side I know personally I've struggled with, and I know she talks about a lot of men struggle with that. I mean, you think about society, you think about all things military related, it's all really the same. That's the one that I've struggled with the most growing up. I don't think I recognized it until about these past few years. My dad was a little bit more of, he was still like, my dad was great growing up and everything, but we didn't really share our feelings per se. I would tell him I'm upset or whatever. I remember he kicked me in the eyeball one time when we were doing Taekwondo, and it was the second time that that's happened. I can't remember if I told that on here or not, but Lena McBeal kicked me in the eyeball. He came over and covered me. The second time it happened, he kicked me in the eyeball. That's why I have this lazy eye. And, I remember him just being like, "You're fine." And I do that with my kids now. Like, they get hurt, I'm like, "You're fine." But we didn't really like talk about the things. My mom on the other side, we did. She was more of and my mom's, she's great. She's more of like on the serious side of like, "Tell me how you feel." Like, she's more of that. So I think I got a little bit of that from her. But my gosh, growing up, I was in JROTC, weightlifting, football, all the sports. Then I joined the military, and it was just the expectation that you got to be tough. In the military, you didn't complain about stuff, and you didn't talk about your feelings neither. When we were at boot camp, there was no talk. You could say, "Man, I miss my family." That's about all you were going to say. And I think that there's that expectation for the fellas out there. It's like, that's just the way that you need to be. That's just, and even like talking anything about being uncomfortable or being sad about something, or, "Hey, I don't know, I'm nervous about this." Like, you just don't say those things.
Yeah.
And, I even feel like being in the state platoon and being in the military, that was years ago for me. And so when we look at the measure of our life, that was just a little section of my life, but I still feel the weight or the obligation to continue to be that person, even though that was a section of my life. My life has existed longer than those 8 years of my life in the military. But I still feel that heritage and expectation that I am still that person to continue being that person, even though I've had more years here at Morris-Jenkins than I had in the military. And so I wanted to ask you this question. I have that obligation or that feeling, but is who we are, like the person that we are, is that defined in the moment that we're existing in right now? Or is that more of a measure of our entire life?
I think so. There's a couple things I want to say about what you just said. So don't let me forget to go back to your question.
Yeah.
But going back to the men and women thing, because I think that's really, Mark, I already asked him for his permission. He sent me a video the other day that was about this exact thing that you're talking about this, about men. And I don't remember the name of it now. I can link it in the show notes. But oh boy, I was crying. And just thinking about that, thinking about what it's explaining. And you and I talked about this a little bit earlier, but, the biggest shame trigger for men is being perceived as weak. And that's in her research. That's not like Meredith just pulling that out of thin air. She has in Daring Greatly, which is another one of Brené's books, also in the library. She has a whole section in the book about men and women and their shame triggers. And so the biggest shame trigger for men, 100%, doesn't matter, where you grew up, none of that matters. The biggest shame trigger is to be perceived as weak. And so when we think about the first thing that people think of when they think about vulnerability is weakness, we can see why it's perhaps, I don't want to say more difficult for men, but we can see why there's a very, you got to really be pushing yourself to be vulnerable as a man, because most people perceive vulnerability as weakness. And the biggest shame trigger for men is to be perceived as weak.
Well, the hard part is, even if you find a moment to share in a closed setting, like you do tech talks and all the things, and I'm sure that there's been people in there that have been vulnerable.
Yeah.
And so you want to encourage that behavior and say, hey, it's okay to you don't have to guys, you don't have to like sit there and drop to your knees and
Yeah.
platoon style, throw your hands up in the air, cry, what? You know, like, and like have this big moment, but you share there. But what happens with the moment that you walk out of there?
Yep.
Everybody else in the building and the world don't know what you just did in there and aren't going to encourage the idea of, hey, be vulnerable, or how do you, like, what's going on, man? How's life?
Yeah.
Tell me, how's it going? The expectation the moment you walk out of there goes back to what it was before you walked in there, is that vulnerability is weakness.
Yep.
And the rest of society supports the fact that you need to be rough and tough. That's the expectation. And so, like you said, it takes a lot to push yourself outside of that. But then when you want to continue it, the expectation of everybody else and what you experience is the complete opposite, which is hard.
Yeah. I had a member of the team in a tech talk one time say, I want nothing more than to find somebody to spend my life with and start a family. And I'm just so beat down by the fact that I can't find someone. I'm putting myself out there to no avail, and I just feel like it's never going to happen for me. That was a hard thing to say in front of other people, and took a lot of courage to say, this is what I really want, and I'm really struggling to get it. And so, but I think that's voicing that or putting that out there. I think that helps us to recognize, what are we doing that might be getting in the way of us getting to that goal? You know, I think until we're really true about what those things are that we are feeling, then we can't start having an awareness about what feelings and thoughts are getting in the way of us having the stuff that we want.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Going back. Well, first of all, for all the ladies out there, don't want to forget y'all, because clearly I've already talked about my issues. This is like a therapy session. But for women, the biggest shame triggers are how we look and being perfect. And that is such a shame that we are still in the day and age where, you know, women, one of the biggest shame triggers is how we look. And then also to the being perfect. And also she talks about doing all of those things effortlessly. So if you work really hard in the gym, or then don't talk about that. You look perfect, but don't talk about all the effort that you had to put into it. It's just like it happened it's just a miracle. So
this might be confirmation bias, but I feel like I hear, oh, it's nothing.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Oh, I did all of these things, you know, for my family. We maybe, like, let's say you put on a really cool birthday party, or you did this or whatever. And then as soon as someone says, oh my gosh, this was amazing, you say, oh, it was nothing. So downplay all of your achievements.
It was nothing. Their eyes are glassed over,
right,
and exhausted.
Yeah, like that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And it's exhausting. You know, I've talked about that on here before. It's just the idea of these things is just how we look, being perfect, doing all of it without breaking a sweat. Like, it's exhausting for women.
Yeah.
And she, of course, Brene said when she has a TED Talk, which you should also watch. And so, of course, there's uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure when you put yourself out there to the world, and like she did with her TED Talk. And of course, she couldn't help herself. She read the comments after the TED Talk, and immediately the biggest shame triggers for women, they showed up for her. You know, like, she should worry less about vulnerability and worry more about losing 15 pounds. You know, like, those are the types of comments that people made. And those things, that's just pushing right into the shame triggers, the shame gremlins for women. I feel sorry for her kids. You know, like, that's being a mom, things around a mom, that's also a shame trigger for women.
Yeah.
And so it's, I think we just have to recognize. And the thing about it is like, men and women both, we have these things that we're dealing with, these shame triggers that we're dealing with. And ever talk about them. You know, it's like, because, you know, I think about Michael and I'm like, how is Michael feeling around all of this? Is he feeling like, I don't know, is he feeling the pressure of being a man or not being perceived as weak? And it's like, why don't we talk about these things? I know that pressure is there. It's there for all men. I know that the pressure is there for all women. Why are we not talking about it? Why are we not saying, like, this shit is hard? Like, how can I help? Like, let's talk about it for a second. But if we could, like, I think it would just help. It would really help in the connection that we have with people, because we are all struggling with these things.
Yeah. Brings up a lot of thoughts. And I do think it's important to find people that you can talk about those things with, because like you said, it's interesting that we're all feeling that and yet we don't talk about it.
Yeah.
It's I don't know, it's a very odd phenomenon. Everybody's dealing with it, but no one talks about it and acts like it's okay. A book, 6 Minute X-Ray, Chase Hughes wrote that one. Very interesting book. But he talks about the masks that we wear. And one of them is that there's kind of like rules that he's wrote in the front of the book. And one of them is that everybody wears a mask. We all have this face that we put off to the world. And then number 2 is everyone is acting like they're not wearing a mask, which is very interesting, because you can always see the people in the halls. Hey, how are you? Oh, I'm doing good. How are you? And it's not often that we actually say, like, what's going on today, and actually care. And sometimes, I know Rachel said, I'm okay not being okay. She would be one. You're like, hey, how are you? I'm not so good.
Yep.
And like, give a crap and take a minute and be like, what's going on? And care, right? That's a moment of vulnerability for her. Not everybody would say something like that. So you need to appreciate it and be there, right?
Yeah.
But everyone's wearing a mask and everyone's acting like they're not wearing a mask. There's more rules that go along with it, but those are the 2 that stood out to me. We all know that we're all hurting in some way. We're all struggling and dealing with things, just like the Dudes News said earlier. Doesn't matter if you're rich, poor, whatever, we're all dealing with things. Be a human being and just care, right? Yep. And so, along with some of the things that we've talked about today, I think it's important to think about how can we combat this vulnerability side, like how can we lean into it, but also she talks about shame, and I think she talks a lot about shame, but some things that you can do that offer some resilience to shame, and thinking about how to lean into vulnerability. There's a couple things that I wanted to share with everybody today, and I don't know if you saw this. There's that website that Shallon shared with us, and they kind of give you some graphics and some visuals, and there's 4 key elements to combat shame. One, we've talked about a little bit today, which is recognizing shame. Know and acknowledge when you're feeling shame. Identify your self-doubts and self-criticism. I think that's absolutely the first step in recognizing, okay, I'm feeling shameful. I don't want to lean into vulnerability. I need to recognize maybe some of the armor that I'm carrying around. If you don't recognize you have it, like, that's another thing. We all are wearing armor in some way. You might think, oh, life is good. And then you start reading some of those 16 items and you're like, well, I might be carrying a little shield and a little sword over here.
I guarantee you will recognize.
We all have it. Yeah. And I tell you, it's mind blowing. I'm sure same thing happened. You start reading that and I'm thinking about myself. And then I'm like, dadgummit, I saw that. Somebody was doing that the other day. Like, you can see it. So the first one's recognize shame. Number 2, assess expectations. If you can identify the underlying social, cultural expectations, you can assess, are they realistic or not? So the expectations that maybe you have of yourself, just like it just said, social and cultural expectations. I need to look good and I need to make it effortless. A lot of that stuff is like, it's not even realistic. It's like, come on. Like, that's not even close to what reality actually is. You're going to be exhausted. It's okay. You don't have to make it perfect. You show up late to practice. It isn't the end of the world. And so that's number 2. Number 3, which again, we've talked about some here today. Just want to put a name to it, which is reaching out. Reach out to somebody you trust, right? Shame doesn't like to be talked about. And so if we can find people that we trust, little Marlboro jar type people that know your grandparents' name or know your kids' names or have shared an experiences with you, have listened to you and show you that they can be trusted. Let them know what's going on. You got to get that stuff off your chest. Otherwise, you're carrying armor and you're carrying that baggage with you, which we know we don't want to do that. And tying into that is share it, ask for support, talk to somebody that can help you. The thing that's interesting she wrote is shame can't survive once it's exposed. Once you put it out there, it starts to die. And it's typically, a lot of times, it's not just one time. Our life is hopefully really long. So then, you have all these moments that can pop up and shame can pop back up. Vulnerability is there. Like the moment that something happens, there's uncertainty, risk of emotional exposure. Boom, vulnerability. And then we're shameful of it that, hey, no one's dealing with this, just me, which is a bloody lie from the gremlins. They're cute. The gremlins. And it's like, dude, I need to talk about it. But our natural reaction is protection. And I need to keep it to myself and not share it to anybody. Going back to the tribe thing, everybody has their own role, hunter, gatherer, whatever. Everybody has their role. But the moment that you're not fulfilling your role, it's like, this is what you do. You can be cast out. Well, guess what? Like, that's not how it works in society today. We feel like I need to hold it together because I have a job to do here and I don't want to tell anybody to show weakness, because if you're sick or weak, you're kicked out of the tribe. We all have something going on. So recognizing that, hey, I need to share and maybe somebody on my team can help me out. That's where it shows up. That's where the beauty happens of, hey, I know somebody has my back and I can grow and they can help me get out of this. And a lot of times you'll find as soon as you share with them, they're like, man, I'm dealing with some stuff too. And y'all are able to help each other. That's when trust is built. That's when relationships are built. And you find your people that you can always rely on. So those 4 things, those are some elements of how we can combat shame and essentially help stamp out and help us out with vulnerability.
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast she did this morning, and she talked about not being able to ask for help. You looking at the number one suspect when it comes to not being able to ask for help. And a lot of that comes from the shame of not being able to do it myself. Not being able to be perfect and figure it out and have all the answers and do it on my own. So if you're the type of person who you find yourself never asking for help, you're carrying around something, some armor, some shame, some something. Because when we won't ask for help, because in our minds, asking for help is showing weakness. And so if you're like, oh yeah, that's me, I have a hard time asking for help, then that means there's something there that you have to kind of figure out why that is, why you feel like you can't ask for help.
Yeah. And there may be certain people out there that have much harder time asking for help than others. I know I don't like to ask for help if I can help it, but I've practiced it more, asking for help, and I'm more okay with it. And there are plenty of moments where I'm like, I need to do this on my own for specific reasons. And I think that's okay. Like, I need to grow and I need to figure this out. That's okay too. But it's okay to ask for help. If there's no problem asking for help, ask for help.
Yeah. Like, I think about when I feel going back to trying to do everything and make it look effortless and perfect. I expected that of myself for a long time, and I never asked Michael for help. I never said, like, I'm having a hard time getting the girls here and there and leaving work early and here. And I feel bad because I have to ask Shallon if I can leave work early to get the girls to Girl Scouts. And then I have to, come home, get dinner done. Like, I was just feeling so overwhelmed. Then what it also turned into was me resenting Michael for not helping me. But I had never asked for help. And that goes back to the fact that I was having this expectation on myself that I should be able to do all of those things, make it look perfect, make it look effortless.
Did you feel like you're going to feel guilty by asking for help?
Sure.
Yeah.
Because I'm the mom, and that's what moms do. Like, they take their kids to Girl Scouts and dance and do all that. But guess what? Dads can do that too. And they should. And so I finally had to get to the place where I'm like, I can't do all of this. I can't do this all by myself anymore. I can't do it. And that's hard. That is very difficult to say to someone, I can't do it. And So I think you have to, when I think about asking for help, that's the first example that comes to my mind, is me just being able to look at Michael and say, I'm about to run myself into the ground.
Yeah.
We're going to need to figure something else out. And so, but that to me is being vulnerable, because it's showing that I can't do it all.
Yeah. I had to ask Susie for help the other day. I can't fold these clothes. I just can't. I can't do it like you can. Truth be told, I don't know. She has a special talent for folding clothes. I mean this with uttermost respect, because when I fold clothes, it takes me an hour to fold clothes. When she does it, she's watching TV, which I'll be doing. We'll like have our two baskets. She'll do two baskets to my one, and I'm folding them as quick as I can. They never look as good as hers, and my back is wrecked by the end. Does your back hurt when you fold clothes?
Yes, sometimes.
I'm wrecked by the end. Those back extensions I was talking about, easier than folding clothes. So there's a basket sitting next to the bed right now, and I know that I'll have to do those tonight, and I won't be able to walk tomorrow because of my back.
That's right.
Honey, I need your help. If you're listening to this, I need your help.
Yeah. Well, and then I know you asked me a question earlier, and maybe it ties back to this or maybe not, and this might be a good way maybe for us to wrap this up, but I think you asked a question like, is it this part of our lives or our whole lives? Yeah. And she talks about we own our story, or our story owns us. Let me say that again without tripping over my words. We own our story, or our story owns us. And so I think when we think about our story is all of it. I think I have to own the fact that I have expected too much from myself in the past, that I've expected myself to be perfect. I have to own all parts of my story so that I can own my story. I feel like I'm doing a much better job now at owning it in a way where it doesn't own me. But if I didn't recognize the way that was for me in the past, I don't think I could own it in the way that I'm owning it now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which, BT dubs, is not perfect.
No,
I certainly don't want anybody on here to think that like I've got it all together. I just told you before the podcast, I don't know what's going on this week, y'all, but it's like I'm wanting to cry. I'm crying, like in the car, crying, and all these types of things. And it's like, so believe me, it ain't perfect.
Meredith, we don't talk about stuff like that.
It is, but it's like, I just have to own the part that it's okay for me to be emotional and not even know why I need to be emotional, because that's part of my story.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you trusting me with things like that, yes. And our audience as well.
Yep.
I mean, I do think having moments of feeling like I don't have it all together, or this is really hard, like that, it's okay to feel like that. Mm-hmm. We all feel it at some point, and when we don't talk about it, it perpetuates it and can make it worse.
Yep.
And I think the times that we like quote unquote solve it for ourselves and we're good teaches us that we don't need to talk to people.
Yep.
But why the crap does it keep coming back up? Mm-hmm. And does it even get better? A lot of times when you do talk to somebody, which I love, she writes in her book about us being travelers, not map makers. Like if you talk to somebody, like our responsibility as the listener is to be like, I don't have all the answers. It's okay to not have the answers. I don't think that we're really meant to, but you can share your experiences and say something similar like that happened to me, and this is how I handled it. Maybe it's something that can help. We're all on the same journey together. If you're alive and breathing, you're walking on the trail next to that person beside you. But if you see them stumble, it's like help them back up and keep on boogieing, like keep on moving down the trail. And so she also talks about being a safe container for people. Like, hey, right here in this moment, I've got you. Like, and keeping it between the two of you, building trust. But vulnerability. This is another subject. I know there's a lot of them we say this about, but I mean, there's so much more to talk about when it comes to vulnerability. We could talk for 5 hours.
We could. It's because you get into vulnerability, you get into shame you get into guilt, courage, you get into armor, you get into, I mean, it's just like the list goes on and on. I would strongly encourage those of you who, if this is like new to you and you're like, dang, I ain't never really heard all this before, listen, go on to any podcast platform and put in Brene Brown. Go to YouTube and look up the TED Talk. She had a Netflix special. I don't know if it's still on, but I would certainly, because I do think that this is super important.
Yeah.
Just so that you can feel those deep connections. Number one, so you can show up being who you are every day. Which is uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. But so you can show up being who you are every day, and so you can make those deep connections with other people. It's so important.
Isn't that a thought? Showing up truly who you are is uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. Mm-hmm. Take the mask off, y'all, man. Be who you are.
Yep.
All right. Rapid fire recap. Here we go. I'm going to go for it. We'll see how it goes.
Okay, you go
Fill
for it.
in the blanks. Okay, so we talked about vulnerability today. What we just define it as uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. It happens to us all the daggum time. So myths about vulnerability, because they're going to pop up for us. Vulnerability is weakness. We need to recognize that vulnerability is going to happen. It's not optional. Being vulnerable with people, you ain't got to tell everybody. There's myths that go around. There's myths that go around all of it. So we need to recognize myths are not necessarily true. How can we combat that? Some ways to recognize shame as it pops up. We know shame is saying that I'm bad. Guilt is saying that I've done something bad or something I've done didn't work out. How do we combat shame? We need to recognize it for what it is. We need to assess our expectations, reach out to people, and share it with people. Vulnerability is one of those things. They're always going to be there with us. And when we can recognize it, name it, and find people to share how we feel about things, life gets a lot easier. And we know that it's not easy for anyone. Both the fellas and the ladies deal with it, right?
Yep.
We got to look a certain way and make it effortless. Or, hey, vulnerability is weakness. I'm not sharing with anybody. I'm going to be rough and tough. It's all myths, and there's things out there that we can combat that stuff with. Mm-hmm. So vulnerability is one of those things that are going to show up. Hopefully today helped you out with how to combat that and recognize it for what it is.
I think that was excellent.
We did it.
Yep.
We did it.
We sure did. Okay, so our question for you to answer in the Q&A on Spotify is this. What shield or armor do you find yourself defaulting to when you feel vulnerable? So I gave you my example today. Mine is perfection. If you need a list, if you need a list to choose from, there might be a multiple on the list that you might default to, but we'll link that in the show notes too, so you can start doing a little reflection just like we have. So if you're listening on Teams or Apple, drop your thoughts. Sorry, let me rewind. If you're listening on Teams, which Dave is working on getting those up for us, then please drop us a comment in there so you can let us know what you're doing. If you are listening on Spotify or Apple, make sure that you like the podcast so you don't ever miss a new episode. And other than that, we will see you again in 2 weeks.
For sure.
Until then, have a wonderful, wonderful 2 weeks. And don't forget to work on your vulnerability and think about your armor. And we'll check back in, see how that's going another time. All right, y'all. Thanks for listening. Until then, peace, love, and easy does it.
Appreciate y'all.